Hey everybody, Brian Boyle here and welcome to episode 185 of The Mesh Tongue, and it's good to be back. Today what I want to talk to you about is the iliopsoas and the bursa that sits underneath there. So iliopsoas, bursitis, and this is one of those things that if we're looking at hip and we're looking at across the spectrum, probably is more often experienced than is diagnosed. And so a lot of people just kind of have this. They don't recognize the symptoms. They say I've got this hip pain, goes undiagnosed, kind of clears up. They're given some bunk science treatment of stop, rest, do all that fun stuff. So I'll give you a better explanation of what's going on with iliopsoas bursitis in a second when we get right back. All right, talk to you. All right, welcome back to episode 185. Brian Boyle here. Who am I? I'm a physical therapist. I've got 20 years experience of running, applying that knowledge to runners, keeping runners healthy, keeping runners safe, online coach, strength coach, do a number of things. But what I want to talk to you today about is the iliopsoas bursitis. Now, this is the funky term or the medical term for the hip flexor, right? So more commonly known as the hip flexor. If you hear psoas or iliopsoas, people are like, what is that? It's the two muscles that make up the hip flexor. So the psoas and the iliacus. And these muscles, unfortunately, get a lot of tension placed on them when we're sitting. So if you're sitting a lot, if you're at a desk job, or if you're sitting most of the day, for whatever you do, and then you go to run, the downside of it is that the hip flexors are likely already tight, they're already stiff, and then what happens is that the bursa underneath, so the bursa is, if we think about a fluid-filled sack, think about taking a Ziploc bag filled with water, zip that thing up, okay, and we've got this nice kind of fluid-filled sack. That is what a bursa is. It keeps the, it's supposed to keep the friction from not occurring from the muscle or the muscle tendon and the bone, okay, so it provides this little buffer area. Downside of it is that these bursa can get impinged and pinched off themselves, and then they become the culprit of where the pain's coming from. So as I alluded to earlier, a lot of people are probably experiencing this iliopsoas bursa or bursitis issues and probably go undiagnosed. Now, what are things that we would look out for? We would look out for stress fracture in the femoral neck and head. Whether or not it's just the muscle itself that's a kind of source of thinking differential diagnosis or thinking about what other things could be causing pain in the same area. Could be again something in the cup of the pelvis, the acetabulum. Could be a stress fracture there. Could be a labrum tear. Those are a little bit more towards you've had some sort of trauma, some impact trauma. But if you've increased your mileage too quickly, too fast, again, we have to be cautious of that. So again, stress fractures can always be an issue that we need to look out for. But the bursa, how you notice the bursa is that if we look at the hip movement, typically it's not going to matter whether you're kind of moving the hip in one particular direction or not. Sometimes you say, well, it only hurts when I go out in one direction. Typically, if you've got a bursa that's going on, it's going to hurt every movement that you have, which makes it, like I said, makes it a little tougher to determine whether or not it's a stress fracture or not. Dehydration can affect that. So, summer months now, if you have not been getting enough fluids and you've been, sitting a lot, and then you also, have been running a bunch more because it's lighter out later, or earlier, you've got more hours in the day. Sometimes people will bump their mileage a little bit. What can sometimes happen is that this bursa itself, again, will become inflamed. Now, you don't typically want to put a whole lot of pressure on, so this isn't the time where you go in and you try and get like deep tissue massage and things like that. So in video 2, what I'll show you is some gentle stretches. I'll show you some exercises that will help with the hip bursa or the iliopsoas bursitis kind of deal. But stretching can be significant, so we want to take the pressure off of that bursa, especially if it is caused by the muscle between the muscle and the bone. Take that compression off so we stretch that the hip flexor out. We may have to have you alter the way that you're working, right? If you're sitting a lot, if you have the option to sit to stand kind of at a desk, that may be a short-term thing. There's lots of research back and forth whether sitting versus standing is more effective or better for you. The reality of it is that it's mixed. It's going to depend on the individual. So it's not like an exact like, oh, standing is better than sitting, sitting's the new smoking, and yet, again, it's going to be coming down to probably a healthy mixture of doing both versus one or the other. You can ice, all right? Again, you want to avoid a whole lot of compression. We can do some KT tape or some strength tape on the hip and the hip flexor to try and alleviate some of that pressure as well. There's some taping methods that I can show you how to do that. So there's a lot of things that can be done. It's just, like I said, you have to get the right diagnosis, and I think that's going to be the key. If you don't have that right diagnosis, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of people will go misdiagnosed just because they say, well, just stop doing everything, and it'll go away, and then they go, well, I don't know what happened, it was just probably something in there. But things to look out for are the bursa, with the bursa, are you sitting a lot, dehydration, and then if your hip is painful in every direction, right? So if you lift it up, if you go behind, you go out to the side, chances are that that's a bursa, especially if you haven't had an increase in mileage per se, really quickly, where we would be thinking stress fracture or one of those things. So hopefully you find value in this. If you have, please share this with your friends, your family, your training partners. Whatever you do, don't go hurting yourself to come back. We'll start adding some more videos here very shortly, so I appreciate you subscribing to these. I appreciate you watching these videos. And if you've got any questions, you know what? Send them to me. Brian, BRIAN, @company, and it's the number 5k.com. So company5k.com. I'll be happy to get back to you. And as always, I appreciate you being here. And until next time, we'll see you again.